Hello and welcome to this special edition of Omni Edition Garden City. I am Dan York, and with us today are two women who are going to explain the Healthy Kids, Happy Families program that has been going on here in Garden City for about a year and a half now. And with me is Dawn Schluckebier from the National League of Cities.
Yes.
And Monica Fulton from the Community Resources Department. Thank you very much to both of you for being on the program.
Thanks for having us.
Likewise, thank you.
Dawn, I will start with you. What is the National League Cities? Because I'm sure people have heard it, but they don't know what the actual function of it is.
Sure. So the National League of Cities is a membership organization. We represent cities and towns. We advocate for local issues through grassroots campaigns and lobbying. And then we provide resources and tools for local leaders and elected officials to provide them the tools needed to provide for their residents.
Sure. And how did you end up there?
I ended up there because I was interested I got my master's in public policy and wanted to work in some way with improving outcomes. I happened upon the National League of Cities through their Institute for Youth Education and Families, which is where I'm housed, because the Institute works with a number of different cities on a number of different projects and areas working to improve sort of social outcomes. So education focused, early childhood, access to benefits type work. And so it was an interesting avenue for me to sort of see, to get the policy, a view of how we can affect policy.
And how long have you been there?
Going on 3 years in March.
Okay, and are you out of Virginia, Washington, Maryland?
DC, we're based in DC.
Okay, very good. And Monica, in case people don't know, how long have you been with the City of Garden City and how did you get here?
20 years ago, actually, almost to the month. It was 20 years ago, September. I was hired as a part-time youth assistance coordinator, which became a full-time position about 9 months later. And from there, Family Resource Center supervisor. I expanded the youth assistance program beyond just delinquency intervention and looking at prevention issues. And now today as Community Resources Director, looking at an even broader picture on how to help families in town.
Okay. And specifically, the Garden City title of the program we want to discuss is Healthy Kids, Happy Families. And we have been involved with that now for about how long?
Well, for the Healthy Kids, Happy Families started through the task force, and that began, I want to say, in March of 2013.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that task force worked for six months to develop a project that we now know as the Healthy Kids, Happy Families project.
Okay, very good. Now let me come back to you, and let's go back even further to that. The broader program that Garden City is receiving this funding from was called what?
It's called Cities Expanding Health Access for Children and Families.
Okay.
So I'm happy.
What was the genesis of that?
Sure. So this is a 3-year project that's funded by the Atlantic Philanthropies Foundation. And back when we started thinking at NLC about what we wanted to do within this realm of child coverage, we knew that there had been a lot of progress made in child coverage. But back in maybe 2012, 2013, when we started thinking about what we wanted to do, that there were still 4 million uninsured but eligible kids not enrolled in Medicaid and CHIP. And so we kind of started with that. We also knew that the best or a good time to reach parents who may not be covered themselves is when they're getting coverage for their kids.
Okay.
So we kind of took those two pieces, took our perspective, which, as I mentioned, is working with local elected officials and city leaders in working to improve outcomes for residents. We thought that city leaders would have a vested interest in seeing their residents covered. And we sort of, explored what that might look like, how we might be able to get involved in that work, and ended up with this idea of working with cities to have cities build city-led outreach and enrollment campaigns to increase enrollment specifically in Medicaid and CHIP. This was pre-ACA days.
Okay.
When we first started thinking the Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
So yes, apologies. So that's how we got started in it, and then it's really been a process of like I mentioned, a 3-year, 3-phased project. So we started with 23 cities that we brought together in 2013. Garden City was one of those 23. So we had leadership academies where we really started to kind of think through what a city-led campaign might look like, and talked to the cities and heard from experts and kind of started to put those pieces together. From those 23 cities, we selected 12 to participate in a planning phase, which I think Monica was referring to when the task force was created. So 6 months were spent in those 12 cities really looking into the community and assessing what the needs were and what the best approaches would be. And then from those 12 cities, during that planning phase, the cities were creating a business plan for these outreach enrollment campaigns, and we selected 8 of those 12 cities based on those plans to award implementation grants, and Garden City was one of those 8. And so that was back in July of last year. It's coming up on the end of the project, the end of this year.
Okay. Which came first in this case, the funding or the concept?
That's an interesting question. I think it was a bit of both. It was a collaborative effort with the funders, a conversation. Atlantic Philanthropies works within this field of health coverage. And we, as NLC and the Institute, were looking to kind of get into that realm as well. And so I think it was a collaborative decision.
Okay. And Monica, for you, obviously finding grants is what you do best. What brought you to this particular grant?
It's funny, Dawn was just asking me how I'd heard about it. It literally fell in my lap. I cannot take credit for finding this grant. It appeared in my inbox, literally, in my email inbox from the National League of Cities. I'm really not clear how exactly it came into my inbox. But I remember sending it to my boss, City Manager Muri, and saying, hey, the city might want to look into this. And he replied, hey, Mo, the city might want to look into this. So that's how it started.
Okay. And from our perspective, a lot of what you do at the Maplewood Community Center obviously is dealing with folks that have certain needs. And so this really was in your wheelhouse as far as this entire program.
In a way, the things have changed at the Maplewood Community Center over the years, as we all know. But my background has been with children and families, more in prevention, delinquency prevention, and substance abuse prevention. But really, through that work, we were finding more and more of our families that were coming to us for any of the services at the Family Resource Center. More and more of them did not have insurance. So it just happened to coincide with that awareness and that knowledge that more and more families were uninsured with this email that came through, and I knew that it would work. It would be a perfect missing puzzle piece.
Okay, and this program has been without a doubt a success in our community, at least.
Absolutely, absolutely. It has just been really fantastic, from all the work that the task force members have done to changes that our hospital actually implemented. They have an entity that comes in and helps people get insurance at the ER level. So if they go into the ER and they're uninsured, they have somebody right there to sit down with them, which is a new change. And through this process of the hospital being involved in the project, they really saw the value in that and implemented that change all on their own. I mean, which was fantastic. So, not only do we have those kind of environmental level changes happening, but also the number of insured residents has increased dramatically. I mean, just generally, 600 more adults and parents are covered, and 200 more children are covered that weren't covered before.
And even though the emphasis is on children, obviously it wasn't that specific.
Right, we didn't exclude people. It was children and families, children and parents. And also we had people that came to us that didn't qualify for the low cost or no cost insurance. And so we were able to be application counselors with the marketplace insurance, the Affordable Care Act insurance. So we didn't turn anybody away. If they didn't qualify for the Michigan Healthy Michigan plans, we were able to get them connected with the marketplace plans.
Okay. And Dawn, you mentioned there were a couple of steps before it got to the actual major funding, whittled it down to 8 cities. How many, and 23 were originally considered, do we even know how many total grant applications there were on this?
No.
Dozens, hundreds, thousands?
It was not hundreds and thousands, but it was probably, I think the 23 were selected from maybe just slightly more. So I'd say less than 30 total applications.
Okay.
From the very, very beginning. And then of those 23, the 12 were selected, and then the 8 from that original group.
And Garden City is one of the smaller communities that received one of these grants.
Yes, it's probably the smallest, I think, of the 8. So you're working with Garden City in context with Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Savannah, Georgia, Providence, Jacksonville, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is another one of the smaller communities, and Dallas, Texas as well.
And you're here in Garden City today just to kind of get an overview, I guess, and meet the actual players in this?
Yeah, it's one of the exciting parts of the work. We're able to go to site visits to each of the cities. I think I may have missed New Bedford in that list as well.
Okay.
If I don't go in alphabetical order, then I will forget somebody inevitably. But the site visits are an opportunity to go and see. We talk with Monica and the team quite regularly, and bring the cities together regularly for them to learn and share with each other. But it's been great for us to be able to come to Garden City and visit the other cities and see the work on the ground and get a sense for the community that we hear, third hand through the team about. And so it's been, one of the sort of perks of the work, I think, is getting a sense of all the different communities.
And what other communities have you been to so far?
Pretty much all of them. We're headed to Providence on Wednesday,
Okay.
and so we visited all of the other ones.
All right.
Jacksonville, and I think might have been first, and Pittsburgh most recently.
So, considering that Garden City is one of the smaller communities, and some of these towns you're mentioning are large metropolitan areas, how does what Garden City has done compare with what some of these other communities have done?
It's interesting. It's something, that's one of the sort of interesting pieces of it is you've got 8 cities that are working on generally the same thing, but they're doing it in somewhat different ways. And so that's one of the pieces we've been interested to see. Garden City as a smaller community, we just participated in a task force meeting this afternoon, and were able to see the members of the community who had a seat at the table and who were invested in this work. And I think that being a smaller community, it might be easier to get that sort of connection to the community, and have folks involved at the very beginning, the buy-in from your community stakeholders. It's also been sort of, the marketing campaign of the happy families, healthy kids, healthy kids, happy families, has been, sort of something that I feel like has blanketed Garden City in a way that maybe a marketing campaign couldn't necessarily do in a larger city as easily and effectively.
Sure.
So we've seen sort of different characteristics from each of the cities.
Okay.
And I think Garden City being a smaller one, you definitely get that community buy-in, and sense of community.
Now, from your standpoint, what has been your process in putting this all together as far as the actual operational standpoint of doing this over the last year?
I draw lots of pictures.
Okay.
So it actually all took place during the planning phase and building the business plan. The task force members had incredible input into that process. It was very important to them that we provide that one-on-one application assistance, which wasn't necessarily a requirement of our project. It was more about getting the word out there about eligibility requirements, but our task force was very adamant that we provide that one-on-one assistance to people, helping them fill out their applications and providing the individualized care with the follow-up, making sure that they got their insurance, making sure that they were able to choose a primary care doctor, and those kinds of things, that very personal service that Garden City is kind of known for, right? So the task force is the one that kind of built this project. And it was just a matter of taking good notes and putting it all together in a business plan that made sense.
Okay. And the execution, again, I referred to it kind of generally as been successful. But, and you did throw out some numbers there. How do the numbers that were realized compare with the numbers that you expected?
Well, it's a little bit upside down, actually. We had anticipated that we would reach 600 uninsured children and 400 uninsured adults. But it's looking like that's actually flipped upside down. So we've reached more than 600 uninsured adults, and we're at about 150 or close to 200 uninsured children that are now insured.
Okay.
So we're in the process right now, towards the end of this project, of evaluating our efforts. And so I really encourage anyone listening to go to the city's website and complete the survey. That there's a link to the survey on the website. I think it's on the community resources page. And give us feedback. Let us know if your children are insured. Let us know if you're insured. It's all anonymous, but that will give us a really good idea. Did we reach our target audience? Did we overestimate the number of uninsured children? Do we still have more work to do? So please, if you can take just 5 minutes and complete that survey, it'd be really, really helpful.
Well, and that brings up a great point. How were you and how was the group able to estimate in advance how many uninsured you thought there were? Because you would think that it would be a rather scientific method, but it requires more art than you would think.
Right, exactly. So it was a combination of state statistics, the percentage of uninsured children in the state average, as well as our little slice of the census tract, what that percentage of uninsured looked like, as well as the survey that we did in the community during the planning phase. So this survey that is out there now is the same one we had out there in the spring. The spring? Or last fall? I can't remember now. But through those answers on the survey, we kind of got a picture of how many children were uninsured based on that survey, and then we had to do some math, to apply it to the community at large. So, there's a chance that our math was not right.
Okay. But based on that math, how many percentage-wise, I guess just talking about kids, what did we reach? 50% of what we thought was uninsured?
We're just under 50%. We're
Okay.
about, I forget, and I can't do the math in my head.
Okay.
But yeah.
But just under 200 people we reached.
200 children, right.
Okay, 200 children, correct. Okay. So we say this program is wrapping up. What is the targeted end date of this program?
So initially when we started, the targeted end date was the end of this calendar year, so the end of December 2015. It's living on in certain ways. The sustainability of some of the pieces of the campaigns vary from city to city. And so in Garden City, this effort is going to continue based on the fact that the city was awarded the Navigator grant, and they're able to do marketplace enrollment. And so the enrollment work is going to continue, which we're really, really excited to see. I think that's a huge achievement and a really great sort of way to sustain this effort.
Okay.
And so I think different pieces in some of the cities, the campaigns are going to look a little bit different, but some of the pieces of the campaign will continue.
All right, and let's clarify that statement because we didn't really talk much about that. But the Marketplace Navigator grant that the city has now received, that the Community Resources Department has now received, explain what that is to folks, because it does get very confusing and the area and the lines do start to blur, but now we're talking about a totally different grant and a totally different approach, correct?
Not exactly totally different approach. We're definitely taking what we've learned through this process with the National League of Cities and applying it to outreach efforts and enrollment assistance beyond just Medicaid and CHIP, beyond the Healthy Michigan program. So into the Affordable Care Act insurance that individuals can obtain through the marketplace. So the federal government provides grants to agencies to become navigator agencies to provide that one-on-one application assistance that we've been doing with the Healthy Michigan program on the marketplace. And where the navigators are highly trained through a standard training that they have to go through and they have to pass. They're trained to help people complete their applications. They're trained on helping them select the most cost-effective affordable health plan. To know the difference between all the different health plans, to know which doctors participate in those health plans so that they can make sure that there's a local doctor that the individual is able to get to. They're trained on getting the individuals the tax credits they're entitled to, and they're able to connect them with the proper entities if they need to make an appeal or they have a complaint of some kind. And then the bonus is to being a navigator is we are also able to help our small businesses in town select a plan to offer to their employees that's an affordable plan.
Okay. All right. And that grant is in place, and how long does that grant run for?
So it's designed to be a 3-year grant. They grant the money in 1-year increments. And every year the granting agency kind of reviews our our efforts, make sure that we've done what we said we were going to do and that we're able to accomplish what we said we'd accomplish to continue receiving the funding. So every year I have to apply for a continuation grant, telling them what we've accomplished and what we're going to do for the next year to get the money.
Okay.
It's non-competitive though at that point.
All right, as long as you meet the qualifications at that point, you're only competing against yourself, basically. Right. All right. Now, you have been on this tour around the country, I guess, of all of these communities, and you have not been the only person, correct?
Right. No, my colleague Carla Plaza has also been joining me on most of the trips, and so she is here with us today, and we have a couple of other stops on the Garden City agenda, but it's been great to be here. I was able to come in on Saturday and participate in the chili cook-off, which was a great view of the community, I think, so we've been enjoying our time here.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
What are your future plans with the National League of Cities? What are your next projects coming up?
Yeah, so there are a couple things on the horizon. I'm part of the Family Economic Success Team, which is where this effort is housed. And so we work on a couple of different projects, including working with cities to implement and expand after-school and summer meal programs. So that is going to continue in another form. We've been doing it for 3 years now. We'll start a 4th year in January. And then there is some financial inclusion work and financial education, children's savings account projects that I believe Monica and Garden City participated in as well. So a couple of things coming down the road. And if I could just mention,
Sure.
backing up for a second on what Monica mentioned, the direction that the city is going with the navigator grants. You know, I mentioned sort of the idea that we had starting this was that cities had a vested interest in coverage and providing coverage to their residents. And I think, you know, the Community Resources Department wasn't involved in health care, providing health care access necessarily before being involved in this project. And so I think it's a really, really great thing. We're really excited to see the city sort of take on that role and then for it to grow in the way that it has. And so I think, you know, that's a big accomplishment and something that we'll look at as a success for sure.
Okay. And Monica, for anyone in the community that maybe somehow has been missed, that somehow didn't know all of this was going on, whether they're interested in child care for their or health care for their child, or whether or not they're maybe interested in help navigating the health insurance marketplace, who do they contact? What do they do?
So they can come to the Maplewood Center and see Megan or Kara at the Community Resources Department. They can call their office at 793-1857. The marketplace open enrollment begins November 1st. So unless you've had a major life circumstance change, enrollment begins November 1st for the marketplace. But Medicaid, Healthy Michigan is open year-round. Yeah. There's no enrollment deadline, anything like that for Healthy Michigan.
All right. Well, I want to thank you and Carla for coming to Garden City.
Excellent. Thank you.
I want to thank you very much for taking time out to explain all this to us again. We've had you do it over and over and over again, but I guess that's how it works.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and congratulations on a great program, both to the NLC and to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. That's this special edition of Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Dan York. Thanks very much for watching, and good night, everybody.